10 spine-chilling true sibling encounters, terrifying tales of sinister twins and haunted brothers, in a small town, where the streets once buzzed with laughter and life, whispers of long-lost dreams now haunt each shadow. It was here that a weary single mother named Sarah fought against the tide of despair that engulfed her crumbling existence. With 2 teenage sons, Alex and Jake, she navigated the exhausting routine of serving greasy meals at the local diner while worrying feverishly about bills and the unraveling threads of their family. But as dusk descended and she clocked in for her night shift, odd occurrences began to unfurl like a sinister storybook. At first, it was only the soft whisper of disembodied voices drifting through their gritty apartment, chilling the air like a draft from another time. Shadows flitted across the walls, just out of sight, teasing the comfort of familiarity. They felt alive, haunting reminders of a lost past. Sarah wanted to dismiss them as mere figments of fatigue, but instinct clutched her heart, a relentless grip she couldn't shake. After closing that night, while fatigue clung to her eyelids like lead, Alex crept into her thoughts, his urgent whisper cutting through the fatigue like a knife. Jake's been talking to someone, a twin he says is only for him. He huddled in the dim light, fear etched in his frown, eyes slightly wild. The name alone sent shivers down her spine, an echo of their father, whose death had left them fractured, shadows lurking even in daylight. Sarah shook her head, preposterous thoughts swirling in her mind as she tried to ground herself. Boys can say anything these days, Alex. You know that. But dread seeped in through the cracks of her denial, nagging at her like a splinter deep in her mind. As night after restless night passed, Sarah's unease ballooned. Jake grew more secretive, a distant look in his eyes. Their building, worn down by years, became an echo chamber for her escalating anxiety. The town was littered with whispered folklore of twins and dark entities, phantoms feeding on grief through deep-rooted bonds. She heard the whispers, but they grew louder now, crawling closer with every passing hour. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Unease wrapped around Sarah like a noose, tightening with every restless night. She began digging, peeling back layers of their small town's history, desperate for answers. The past tumbled forth like debris, a tapestry of tragedy stitched together by dualities that thrived among siblings not unlike Alex and Jake. Shadows seemed to stretch within the walls of her home, weaving a connection that threatened to consume her youngest son. Time slipped away and midnight snuck in like a thief, setting the stage for horror as Sarah positioned herself near the bathroom door. Just then, she heard Jake call from the shadows, his voice twisted into something alien, echoing from the depths of the darkness, "Mom." The dread rose heavily in her throat. As she peered into the dim room, she saw it, the reflection wavering in the mirror, a face that was both Jake's and yet not. It surged from nothing, a specter of nightmares come to life. Terror coursed through her veins as she reached for the light switch, but instinct urged her otherwise. She had to know, to uncover the truth that had cloaked them in fear. As their lives hung in the balance, the line between son and specter blurred, leaving her gasping at the chilling reality. Was this just the beginning, or was it already too late? A hollow thump echoed from the bathroom, drawing Sarah back to the moment. Her breath faltered as the reflection pulsated, an uncanny mirror of Jake's features twisted into something darker, hungry. She felt an invisible barrier constraining her, freezing her where she stood. With trembling fingers, she finally flicked the light switch, bathing the room in a stark brightness that sliced through the shadows. Jake stumbled forward, his eyes vacant, as if someone had scooped out his essence. "I'm sorry, Mom, he didn't mean to scare you." But the words landed cold, tasting of bitterness that twisted in the pit of her stomach. The air thickened with malevolence. Behind her son, the mirror rippled like water disturbed by a stone, the figment of a twin forming shape, an uninvited resident of their lives. Darker than the gloom, a silhouette flickered and receded, leaving the air heavy with the musk of damp earth and rot. Questions piled in her mind, but at that moment, instinct took over. "Jake, who have you been talking to?" Her voice trembled on the precipice of authority. The boy turned, face impassive as if processing only echoes. "Someone who understands." Jake's eyes darted back to the mirror. A chill danced on Sarah's skin, fear clawing at her heart. Had he found a companion among the shadows, or something far worse? "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, trying to break through the barrier she felt between them. "Is it about Dad?" "You can tell me." A flicker of recognition flashed across Jake's face, but it vanished quickly, replaced by apprehension. "Dad, he is not what you think. This is different. I found him. He is finally here with me." Sarah's gut clenched at his words. Panic surged, deepening the shadows that enveloped the room. She reached for her son, but Jake recoiled. "Don't you see, Mom? I'm not alone anymore." His voice now felt alien, slipping seamlessly from anguish to unearthly glee. Suddenly, a whisper emanated from the mirror, low and insistent, weaving through the dull thrum of her heartbeat. "Join us." It wrapped around her, clinging like a shroud, and she fought against it as visions flooded her mind, dark notions of desperate bonds. "Jake! You have to listen to me." She grasped his shoulders, feeling the thrum of something otherworldly pulsing through him, but it was too late. The reflection, no longer just a mirror, sparked to life. The air crackled, and a second figure emerged, darker, its eyes hollow voids that reflected nothing. It swirled around Jake, an embrace that bore an overwhelming weight. In that moment, Sarah felt herself slipping, the love she had fought for years to keep alive teetering on the edge of despair. "Mom! Help me!" Jake's voice echoed, but it was muddied with despair as the darkness clawed into him, pulling him back toward the mirror. The barrier solidified around Sarah, pushing her backward. Alex's frantic footsteps pounded down the hallway, interrupting the chaos. "Mom! What is happening?" "Alex! Run! Get away!" He burst into the bathroom, but saw only shadows closing in, the entity swirling around Jake like a moth to a flame. The scene locked into an unholy tableau, all bathed in flickering light. A scream formed in Sarah's throat but never escaped. She felt small against the tide of terror pulling her son. It was a sea of dark whispers promising connection, yet riddled with darkness. Then, silence. It surged through her, replacing the words she couldn't find. Jake's eyes glimmered, drifting into a void she couldn't comprehend. "He wants us to stay forever, Mom, forever." Just then, the lights flickered and died, plunging them into a suffocating darkness. A haunting giggle echoed through the void, suffocating Sarah in dread. And then she heard it, the soft, unmistakable sound of a door creaking open behind her, what waited in the shadows that lingered just beyond her reach. The door creaked again, a soft, sinister sound that crawled up Sarah's spine. Panic surged through her as she instinctively pulled Jake closer, only to feel a force holding him back, like a taut string ready to snap. Each breath she took felt heavier, as if the darkness itself had weight, pressing down on her. "Jake!" Her voice was raw, desperate, each syllable punctuated with fear. But when she looked, he had become almost spectral, face contorted between familiarity and something altogether alien. The twinkle in his eyes, once bright, was overtaken by that emptiness, replaced entirely by shadows that seemed to whisper secrets only they understood. "Mom, I don't want to be scared anymore. He showed me how to be strong." His words trailed off, and Sarah felt bile rise in her throat. "Please, you should join us." The last line hung in the air, thickening it, curling around her like smoke. Who was this thing wearing her son's face? The flickering light from the bathroom began to tremble, shadows dancing along the walls, gross parodies of her family. Before she could process, Alex, confused but emboldened, stepped closer, eyes darting as he searched for clarity. "What is happening to him, Mom?" Chains of icy dread wrapped around her heart as she stammered, "It's not him. We have to get out." The words felt inadequate, as if mere flight could obscure the monstrosity in their midst. She lunged toward the door, pushing Alex ahead of her, but something firm and unyielding gripped her arm. "Mom, don't go." Jake's voice morphed as he struggled against the force pulling him, his entire form flickering like a candle in the wind, wavering at the edge of existence. The entity's grip became a vice, a twisted amalgamation of Jake's essence and something far worse, something that dripped malice with every breath. "Jake, fight it!" she pleaded, a raw prayer spilling from her lips. The mirror behind him rippled again, brighter, pulsating like a heartbeat. Through it, she saw flashes of shadows, faceless figures leering back, each mouth twisted into a cruel grin. But Alex was still there, trembling, fear etched deeply into his features. "I don't want anything. I just want my brother back." The resolution in his voice seemed to fracture the air, even if just for a moment. The ripples intensified in the mirror, and with each surge, a chorus of whispers clawed at her sanity. Join us." It beckoned with a pull of dark familiarity, an offer of acceptance, and something sickeningly sweet. As if on cue, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the bathroom in a harsh glare. But the light twisted, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance away from their source. In the reflection, Sarah's horror deepened. Jake was no longer just there, he was merging with that dark figure. His very essence seemed to bleed into the void. "Help me, Mommy!" The sob broke from Jake's lips, small and childlike, a fleeting echo of the boy he once was. It sent a shiver down her spine, slicing through the thick fear surrounding them. Before Sarah could react, Alex turned towards the mirror, drawn in like a moth to a flame. "No, Alex. Stay back." She lunged but found herself rooted, as if the floor had become quicksand beneath her feet. The shadow twisted, reshaping into a visage that bore a grotesque resemblance to Jake. "Welcome to my family," it crooned, voice dripping with mockery. The heart-stopping truth settled like an iron weight in her chest. Whatever lingered in that mirror wanted more than Jake, it desired to claim them all. The shadows gathered around Sarah, coaxing her with empty promises. Her mind raced. But just as panic threatened to whirl into a frenzy, a crack echoed through the room, a splintering sound that reverberated with finality. The bathroom door slammed shut, trapping them inside the darkness. What now lurked beyond the bathroom door as the oppressive shadows pressed in tighter? The darkness felt alive, pulsing with a hunger that clawed at Sarah's sanity. The familiar shape of her son, or what had once been him, began to shift more grotesquely. Shadows swirled, merging with Jake's form, drawing closer as if each tremor of light tried to escape their reach. "Mommy!" The cry was desperate, laced with terror and something dark, something that threatened to drown them in despair. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing the horror away, praying for some sliver of hope to pierce the encroaching void. But when she opened them again, the sight was worse. Jake's face twisted, merging with the shadow, his features melting into an amalgam of everything wrong. "Join us, Mommy!" The thing that wore him grinned, too wide and too sharp. It was wrong, a parody of the life they once had. The hairs on her arms stood up, every instinct warned her to flee, yet her feet remained stuck to the floor. Alex, still trembling, stood next to her, his small form dwarfed by the encroaching dread. "What do we do, Mom? What can we do?" His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. He dared a step closer to Jake or the shadow that had him. "No!" Sarah shouted, her voice desperate, almost hysterical. We can't do anything." The words spilled out, almost incoherent, as if her mouth couldn't shape her fear. "It's not him. He's not our Jake anymore." The shadows thickened, crawling towards them like ink spilling from a broken bottle. The whispers had grown tenfold, a cacophony that screeched at her mind. Join us, be one with us." The echoes slithered beneath her skin, igniting a primal response within her. "Alex, we have to fight!" she exclaimed, heart hammering in her chest. "We must get out." Panic low and furious, she pulled at her son. "We'll find a way, we have to." And just as her words hung in the air, the bathroom itself seemed to shift. The walls pulsed, its surfaces warping and twisting, reflecting not just their reality but some wicked otherworld. The mirror, once a mundane piece of glass, reflected a dark world beyond. Faces of lost souls writhed within it, their mouths stretched open in eternal screams, pleading for release yet trapped in an endless nightmare. No. No. Alex cried, his hand covering his mouth as he stepped back, fear radiating from him. What do they want? Mommy, I'm scared. Jake's voice now was softer, more distorted, as if echoing from the depths of a dark well. Sarah looked at him, searching desperately for a flicker of recognition in those shadow-infested eyes. The moment hung heavy, the air thick with terror and regret. Despair gnawed at her insides. Jake! Fight it! In an instant, the shadows lunged, reaching past the threshold of the mirror, clawing for her child. The force that gripped Sarah's arm started to loosen, an opportunity, a fleeting chance. Alex, run! Get out of the bathroom! But before he could move, dark tendrils snaked around his ankles, pulling him back. Alex! Sarah screamed, reaching for him, their hands inches apart. The walls began to shift violently, the mirror warping as the shadows poured forth, converging, a mass of darkness squeezing in on them, smothering the last fragments of escape. Sarah lunged forwards, but the darkness hot and slick wrapped around her like chains. Join us! The voice echoed so deeply, so haunting, that it resonated through her bones, rendering her thoughts into a whirlpool of despair. The whispers grew louder, more frenzied, drowning out everything else. And then, with a final desperate cry from Alex, the light flickered off, plunging them into suffocating darkness. In that crushing silence, an unsettling thought cushioned in her mind: what if there was no escape? What if safety was merely an illusion? Then, from the emptiness, she sensed a cold breath, brushing against her neck, carrying a promise of unspeakable horrors to come. What awaited them in the black depths now enveloping the room? The darkness pressed against them like a living weight, pulsating with an unseen rhythm. Sarah gasped as the chill enveloped her completely, warping the air around her. There were no shadows to hide behind, they were all around her, swirling, whispering, taunting. Mommy? I can't see. Alex's voice quivered, his small body trembling against the encroaching black. The sound of his fear sliced through her, igniting a protective fury within her. Hold on to me! She shouted, reaching out blindly, clawing through the thick void for her son. But her hand met nothing but air. Panic surged as she whipped around. Alex, where are you? She screamed, her heart racing faster as silence reigned instead of the sweet sound of him beside her. Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of soft laughter, high-pitched and cruel, echoing in the darkness. It sobered her instantly, a chill running straight to her bones. The laughter erupted into a frenzy of distorted whispers, their voices clamoring for attention, wrapping around her mind like vines strangling a tree. Join us, we want you, stay away! Sarah shouted, gripping her head as if trying to physically shove the whispers out. She felt as though she could feel them wrap around her skull, filling her thoughts with chaos. The darkness twisted her memories, yanking at the edges of her mind like a child pulling the legs off a spider. Then, like a cruel spotlight, a dim light flickered, illuminating a figure standing at the edge of the bathroom. It was Jake, or what was left of him. Help me! He wailed, the sound cutting sharply through the shadowed night. Jake! The word exploded from her lips, a desperate cry barely containing the swell of hope. But as she took a step closer, the shadow that enveloped him thickened, a serrated maw growing wider. No! It's a trick! The creature that wore Jake's face turned, its grin growing wider until it seemed to unhinge. Join us, Mommy! The voice resonated deeper than Jake's ever had, hinting at a terrible truth: the thing that had taken him was not just a shadow, but something far worse. Alex! Her heart constricted. The laughter from before morphed into guttural sobs echoing through the void. Mommy, I don't want to join. Stay away from him. She screeched, panic sending adrenaline coursing through her body. She forced herself to approach the thing that had once been her son, desperate to reach through the crumbling reality and save her true child. Fight it, Jake. Remember the games we played. The stories we shared. But the shadows coiled around her, barbed with cruel laughter, searching for her cracks. They were threads unraveling more rapidly as memories faded away, each echo tearing through the fabric of her sanity. We will take everything, Sarah, everything that is precious to you. Then came a sudden jolt, light expanding in the corners of the walls, flickering like a heartbeat trying to survive. Alex. She called again, forcing her feet to move, to lunge towards the laughter. Yet, from within the shadows, fingers like ice seized her throat. They wrapped around her, clawing at her flesh. The walls began to shift and swirl as dark figures loomed, stretching towards her, urgency lighting her chest. You will join us. With an anguished cry, Sarah wrestled free, yanking herself away. She couldn't lose both of her children, not now, not like this. Alex. Where are you? In the distance, the shadowy form slithered and coiled, drawing back for a moment, allowing a glimpse of the real world. Through that shimmering veil, she saw Alex stumbling into the light, eyes wide with terror. Mom! I can't. Then the darkness surged, sweeping in again, swallowing everything. As the last flicker of light was extinguished, an overwhelming dread settled in her gut. What if, in the end, she wasn't seeking the light? What if she was meant to embrace the darkness instead? The shadows began to hum, a dark melody wrapping around her like a shroud, and Sarah realized, they weren't after her, they were after Alex. Would she be able to protect her son, or would they claim him too? The laughter rang out again, filling the void around Sarah with a cacophony of shrieks and squeals that scraped against her sanity. Mommy, help me! Alex's voice echoed, a haunting melody of innocence twisted into something grotesque. She whipped around, desperate to locate him. Stay close! She shouted into the void, but the darkness answered only with silence. The shadows thickened, blacker than pitch, wrapping around her like a suffocating blanket. The walls pulsed with an unnatural rhythm, heightening her senses, making every heartbeat pulse in tandem with the suffocating dread surrounding her. She clenched her fists, trying to push through the darkness that clung to her skin, trying to peel back the coils that constricted her thoughts. Then she saw them, the figures that flitted just beyond her reach, demonic shapes mimicking the familiar forms of lost relatives, friends, faces contorted in grins that were too wide, too hungry. Sarah recoiled, a wave of terror washing over her, crashing through her defenses. You're not real. She hissed through gritted teeth. Still, the laughter grew louder, more chaotic. Suddenly, a flicker of light ignited the corner of her vision. A fragile glow that illuminated the large mirror on the wall. In it, she spotted a vague reflection. Not just her own as she expected, but Alex, his small frame trembling, eyes wide with pure terror. Mommy! They're coming! Alex! She lunged toward the mirror, reaching desperately as if she could break through the glass and pull him away. But as she flew forward, the world tilted and shifted, the mirror warped, twisting like a carnival funhouse, distorting their shapes until she could hardly tell where she ended and he began. Stay where you are. Don't move. Her throat felt tight, choking on her words, as shadows leaped around them, crawling closer and closer. Fingers like icy daggers reached out from the darkness, tugging at her clothes, pulling her back, and for a split second, she felt their icy breath against her neck, chilling her to the core. Join us, Mommy, get away from me! She screamed. But the shadows laughed, the sound ringing like the clanging of bells, warping her hope into despair. Sarah stumbled backward, her heart pounding like a drum against her chest, each beat a reminder of her growing desperation. If she didn't find a way to reach Alex, would he fall prey to the darkness? Just then, the ground beneath her shuddered. An earthquake of shadows rippled through the space, distorting her balance as she fought to regain her footing. Alex, listen. If you can hear me, you need to hold on. But the darkness distorted his image, bending it, stretching it into a grotesque form. The boy in the mirror was no longer just Alex. He morphed, twisting as shadows wrapped around his limbs. "Mom!" He cried again, a high-pitched wail dulled by the sinister laughter. "Stay still." The command burst from her lips, though every part of her screamed that it was hopeless. She felt the whispers crawl into her ears, wrapping around her mind, fighting for control. "Alex!" The shadows thrashed, swirling maliciously as they reached for the last flickering piece of light and hope between them. And then she saw it among the darkness, a small, glimmering chain, an old locket she had lost years ago, swirling within the black. It sparkled. "Alex! Your locket!" She shouted, recognition igniting within her. "It's the key." But as she grasped the idea, the laughter crescendoed, drowning out her thoughts. With renewed determination, she focused on the locket, her tether to him. "If I can just reach it." The darkness recoiled for a moment, but could she break the grip of the shadows that desired Alex? Or was she simply playing right into their hands, leading her son further into their maw? As panic washed over her, she lunged, ready to plunge into the chaotic depths surrounding her. Would she succeed in saving her son, or lose herself to the darkness forever? The darkness thrashed, a living entity wrapping around her ankles, pulling her down. Sarah fought against it, her breath coming in desperate gasps. She couldn't shake the sense that the shadows were alive, tasting her fear, savoring her weakness. The locket swayed back and forth in the depths of the void, its glow flickering like a dying star. "Hold on, Alex. I'm coming." Each word felt heavy as she launched herself toward the mirror, her fingers brushing the surface, where the cold glass rippled and distorted. The reflection of her son twisted and trembled, his terrified cries piercing her heart. "Mommy!" With a sudden burst of strength, Sarah pressed against the mirror, feeling it give way, a strange liquid sensation washing over her as the glass melted like wax, revealing a dark passage behind it. Without thinking, she dove through. The instant she crossed the threshold, the world around her shifted violently. The air buzzed with a static charge as she tumbled into a place that felt like a nightmare manifested. The walls dripped with a dark, viscous substance that clung to her skin like a second layer of skin, tightening around her with each breath. The laughter echoed louder now, a chorus of distorted voices mingling with her son's terrified cries. "Alex!" She screamed again, her voice blending into the madness around her. A figure emerged from the shadows, a grotesque parody of his form, tangled in a web of darkness that strove to consume him. "Mom!" The figure of Alex shimmered and twisted, his eyes wild and pleading. "Help me! They want to let me go." Sarah lurched forward, but the sinister laughter crescendoed, enveloping her. It was as if the sound wanted to pull her back, drown her in despair. She stumbled, reaching out, desperate to grab Alex, but the darkness was quick, shifting and curling around her. Each step felt like wading through molasses, an insidious weight dragging her down, with every muscle screaming in protest. She focused on the locket. The light it emitted was the only anchor in this abyss. Rachel's heart raced as the asphalt-like floor quaked beneath her, sending tremors up her spine. She could feel the presence of something else, something far more sinister lurking beneath the shifting shadows, hungry and eager. "Alex! The locket! It's a beacon!" The laughter morphed, demented and high-pitched, drowning her out. A creature slithered from behind the walls, thin and elongated, skin stretched tight against its bones, with too many eyes and a mouth that grinned far too wide. It hesitated, its gaze fixed on Sarah, drawn to her very essence. "Join us," it rasped, voice a bone-dry whisper that chilled her. The words curled around her thoughts, suffocating her resolve. But she pushed back, steeling herself. "No!" She shouted, raising her hand towards the locket, ready to channel whatever strength she had left. "You don't control me." And then she felt tendrils of warmth from the locket, a delicate vibration that pulsed through her, reigniting her hope. The creature reeled back, its form flickering like a dying light as the shadows began to withdraw. Mommy. Alex's voice cut through the relentless laughter, but she couldn't find him in the chaos. She stepped forward, the light from the locket illuminating her path, every heartbeat a drum urging her to push deeper into the darkness, but just as the shadows shrank away, an ear-splitting shriek echoed through the chamber, reverberating off the walls, a sound of pure malice. A deep crack appeared in the floor, jagged and hungry, threatening to swallow her whole. Sarah. A voice called different, a shade familiar yet twisted. You must choose. The ground shook under her, the mirror world spiraling, the light flickering. Could she save Alex? Or was she destined to become the very thing she feared? The darkness closed in around her, a ravenous beast. As she hovered on the brink, the locket pulsing wildly in her palm, she was suddenly faced with a gut-wrenching choice: plunge into the abyss and risk losing everything, or retreat and doom her son forever. With a final breath, she made her move. Would she be the savior or the damned? The moment she leaped, time seemed to stretch into infinity. The abyss beneath her crashed upward, eager to pull her down into its insatiable maw. Sarah felt weightless, suspended between hope and despair, as the bright light of the locket swirled around her like a cosmic storm. She plunged into darkness. Suddenly, she was no longer falling. Instead, she stood in a chamber, its vast walls pulsating like the beating heart of a beast. A sickly green glow suffused the area, illuminating grotesque shapes shifting in the corners of her eyes. Shadows twisted and recoiled, whispering secrets that danced just beyond comprehension. It was a hideous mockery of the world she knew. Alex! She shouted, her voice biting back the nagging doubts that clawed at her mind. But the answer came only as a chorus of anguished wails echoing through the chamber. The grotesque figure of her son flickered into view again, but this time his image was marred, twisted into a mask of torment. Mommy, they're coming. You have to hurry. Panic surged through her heart, and she dashed toward him, each step weighted with dread. The ground trembled with an unseen force, attempting to drag her back into the depths. The laughter surrounded her still, disembodied voices taunting, scratching at the edges of her reality. Each burst sent shivers down her spine, as if the shadows sought to consume her very spirit. She pressed on, the locket glowing warmly in her palm, yet the light seemed to wane with each passing second. Please. I can't. I want to let them take you. The shadows writhed, and their whispers turned venomous. You think the light can save you? Think again. Suddenly, the chamber erupted in chaos. Shapes lunged at her, none of them human, but shadows blended with flesh, grotesque and writhing. For a moment, confusion and terror seized her. How could she fight against nightmares born from her own fear? Steeling her resolve, she held the locket high. I'm not afraid of you. The vibrant light burst forth, a potent wave pushing the shadows back. She felt a rush of power flow within her, and with it, her confidence grew. Mom! Don't stop! Alex cried, his voice strained but direct. Sarah pressed onward, sweeping her path clear, tearing through the mass of shadows. But squirming figures reached out for her, grasping at her ankles, dragging her down. They were cold, clammy, their fingers burning with suffocating dread. Desperation ignited within her. Get off! Get away from me! Sarah yelled, kicking her feet with renewed energy. The more she resisted, the more the darkness struggled, writhing back as if struck. Join us, it's better in the dark, they hissed, the words oozing nostalgia and sorrow, tugging at her heartstrings. She nearly faltered, the weight of loss pressing heavily upon her mind. Would she truly abandon Alex and let the void claim them both? But before she could answer, a roar crescendoed, a deep malevolence erupting from the shadows. It was a sound of blending pain and ferocity, a force born not of disappointment, but rage. The floor cracked, revealing a gaping pit that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. Sarah! Called the familiar voice again. This time, it did not belong to Alex. You must choose or you will be lost forever. A figure materialized at the back, swathed in shadow. A face familiar yet sinister, her own reflection in this twisted realm, eyes hollow, draped in silky darkness. You can save him, it cooed, but only by relinquishing your own soul. Heart racing, she turned back to Alex, his figure fading and reforming, the distortion pulling at her last shred of hope. What was this thing trying to do? The decision loomed before her, and with the ground trembling beneath them both, she felt the weight of choice close in. Would she sacrifice herself to save her son? Or could she find another way? The creature of shadows grinned wider, eyes gleaming with anticipation, waiting for her answer as chaos swirled all around them. Sarah's hand tightened around the locket, its glow pulsing stronger than before. At that moment, the voice of Alex pierced through once more, steady and brave. Mom, trust yourself. You can do it. The air thickened with inevitability, every heartbeat echoing urgency. Would the glowing locket guide her back to the light, or would it condemn them both to the darkness? The choice was hers, and time was running out. The shadows writhed like living things, shifting restlessly at the edges of her vision. Sarah felt the ground tremble, a low humming vibration resonating from within the pit, and fear surged anew in her chest. What if I lose him? She thought, panic clawing at her throat. Mom! Please, don't think. Just act. Alex's voice was insistent, sharp against the thundering chaos. It was then she sensed it, a heartbeat in the darkness, slow and deliberate, matching the pulse of the chamber walls. Her own heart raced as if it could outrun the horror around her, but adrenaline flushed her with a will to fight. I won't give in. She yelled defiantly, lifting the locket higher. A blinding light burst forth, scattering the shadows, forcing them to retreat momentarily. Their shrieks twisted into a cacophony of rage, but she pressed on, driven by the urgency painted across Alex's frightened face. Mommy, look out! Before she could register the warning, a massive shadow lunged from the darkness, its twisted form barreling toward her. Cold dread washed over her as she instinctively ducked to the side, feeling the whoosh of its passage like an icy breath against her skin. Another wave of shadows surged forward, filling the space around her, a relentless tide determined to drag her down. But something snapped inside her. The image of Alex, the life she had always fought for, ignited her spirit. Stay back! She shouted, channeling all her fear into one defiant force. The light of the locket pulsed brighter, illuminating the contours of the grotesque figures before her, momentarily transforming them into distorted caricatures of the people she knew and loved. Each flicker of light momentarily tugged at her heart, aching memories creeping in. No. Not again. She breathed, pushing those thoughts away like cobwebs. The shadows recoiled but were relentless, and Sarah screamed as fear surged in her chest like a tidal wave. What do you want? She demanded, though deep down she feared she already knew. Your soul, they hissed in unison, their voices mournfully drumming against the walls, lacing the air with despair. Only then will you find peace. Accept your fate. Despair fell heavy around her, mingling with resolve. I want to let you take him. With every ounce of strength, she forced the locket forward, a blinding shield against the rising darkness. It glowed fiercely, a comet streaking through the obsidian void, and the shadows convulsed as if burned by its light. Mom! Alex shouted again, his voice pulling her focus. Don't let them win. Remember who you are. His words, a lifeline in the abyss, renewed her fight. Who was she, if not a mother? She took a deep breath, gathered her will, and pushed deeper into the core of the chaos. The shadows writhed and twisted palpably, each flicker accusing her of cowardice, beckoning her to join their dark embrace. Together, Alex, she murmured, focusing on the bond they shared. She closed her eyes for a moment, wishing to conjure her love into something tangible, something the darkness could not consume. A roar erupted from the pit, and the ground quaked violently. You must choose. The figure of her reflection shrieked, voice sharp as glass, raspy with malevolence. Your light or his life? Terror exploded within her. I want to choose. I'll fight. And with that, the locket flared to life as if mirroring the fierce resolve that burned brighter than fear. She thrust it forward with renewed vigor, sensing the change in the air. The shadows slithered and recoiled, somehow afraid, but the pit yawned wider, threatening to swallow them both whole. Fingers from the darkness clawed at her once more, desperate and cold. "Join us," they beckoned. "It's much easier." "Never!" she screamed, her voice a raw echo of defiance. In that instant, a blinding burst of light enveloped the chamber, and all sound fell silent. As the radiance settled, shadows diminished, fracturing into wisps, but a deafening silence filled the air. "Mom!" Alex's voice floated back, muted and uncertain. "Alex!" she called out, dread racing back through her veins as she strained her eyes against the dim light that still wrapped around them. What had she unleashed? Did they prevail over the darkness, or had she opened a door to a greater horror? And as the world around her faded into uncertainty, an ominous whisper slithered through the silence, chilling her to her core. "You cannot escape your fate." Just then, a piercing scream echoed from somewhere deep in the shadows, quickening her pulse. What awaited her in the dark? The shadowy whispers momentarily silenced as the blinding light flickered, pulsating like a dying star. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribs as fear tangled with an ember of hope. "Alex!" she called again, wary of the heavy silence. The fear gnawed at her, cold and insistent. Had her defiance succeeded? Or had she only managed to momentarily push the darkness back? "Mommy?" The weak voice broke through the gloom, trembling and small. Her heart leaped. "I'm here, Alex. I'm coming." With burning urgency, she sprinted toward the source of the sound. The air around her felt thick, a sticky curtain of dread weaving through her veins, threatening to choke her hope. She saw the dim outline of her son, small and vulnerable, standing at the vortex of shadows that writhed like a living beast. The pit next to him gaped wide, dark and hungry. "No!" Sarah burst forward, her arms stretching out as if to bridge the gaping divide between them. "Don't move. I'm almost there." The darkness peeled away like a curtain, allowing fleeting glimpses of Alex's terrified face. But it twisted, grotesque shadows grasping at his feet, drawing him close to the maw of despair. "Mom!" His voice cracked, urgency threading through his tone. Fear etched itself deeper in his wide eyes. "They're coming for me. I want to let them take you," she shouted fiercely, her voice ripping through the wall of fear that surrounded them. Sarah pushed herself, mind racing with thoughts. The locket. The warm glow felt still faintly beating at her side. She dug for it, pulling it into the open air. Stay away from him. With confidence stronger than the shadows themselves, she raised the locket high. The traumatized shape of her son flickered in the glow, mixing with the encroaching darkness, making Sarah feel sick. The shadows recoiled, hissed, and snarled, frightened of the radiant light but insatiably hungry for their prey. "You cannot protect him, Sarah," they croaked, their voices layered like a sinister choir, mocking her resolve. "Join us. The void embraces all. I reject you." Sarah's voice gathered strength, a war cry erupting from the pit of her heart. She felt the locket pulse in her hand, warmth surging through her fingers. The light radiated stronger as she charged forward, cutting into the sinister surround. "Alex, grab my hand." The shadows clawed at the air as she joined her essence with the locket's glow, channeling the love she held for her son. In that moment, a connection sparked, that tether of love burning brighter than despair. Alex's small hand reached out desperately. "I'm coming," she yelled as she flung herself into the darkness, ready to embrace the unknown, determined to pull her son free. As Sarah dove into the heart of the chaos, the world spun. Shadows howled, screaming into the void as she entered the heart of unrelenting blackness. Suddenly, she felt an intense jolt, a rending of fabric between worlds, an immense pressure crashing around them. "Hold on to me!" Sarah cried, fingers intertwining with her son's, their connection locking them together in a moment suspended between heartbeats. The pulse of the locket surged, growing ever brighter. Light spilled from Sarah's chest like sunlight through clouds, washing the darkness away, dissolving the whispers of despair that clawed at her mind. The walls of chaos twisted, contorting around them, fighting back, but with every flicker of the locket, they shrank down. Together. She shouted, urging the light to envelop them as they rushed, emotions a resonance of fear and love amalgamated into a single force. As their hands clasped tighter, the darkness began to splinter, shadows cracking apart like fragile glass. No. You cannot escape your fate. The chorus of terror screamed, but the deepening light silenced them, severed their hold, and a roaring wave of brightness surged forth. With one final push, a blinding explosion erupted, encapsulating them both. And then they fell. Sarah landed hard on the cool floor of their small apartment, the mundane world rushing back with overwhelming sensation. It felt so normal, so filled with life. She gasped, blinking under the evening light seeping through the window. The pain of what they just lived through faded, leaving an echo of disbelief. Mom. Alex's voice filled the space, soft and innocent, tinged with uncertainty. She grabbed him, hugging him tightly, feeling the solid warmth of his existence pulse against her, quelling the last remnants of fear inside her. They were alive. We did it, she whispered, tears filling her eyes. We made it back. But the locket, a quick glance revealed it was shattered, pieces scattered across the floor, a gentle echo of their recent battles lying in disarray. Mom. Alex pointed at the broken pieces, dread creeping into his voice. What does this mean? Sarah swallowed, heart heavy at the sight. The remnants bore an unsettling thought. It means we have a choice to make every day. Behind the comfort of their walls, she could feel the lingering threat just beyond, the shadows still watching, waiting patiently. But for now, they had each other, standing grounded in their small sanctuary, bathed in flickering daylight. Sarah sighed, renewed resolve swelling within her. She looked down at Alex, who smiled, ignorant of the shadows still lingering just beyond the periphery of their lives. Whatever we face, we'll face it together, she vowed, heart racing with the memory of their descent into darkness. Always together. Just as the words hung in the air, a mere whisper broke through the sunlit room, chilling her spine. It's not over. And though fear crept into the corners of her mind, Sarah clutched Alex's shoulders, ready to face whatever awaited them as long as she had her son. Together against the dark. So don't wait. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these incredible tales. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Your thoughts matter. And listen, you need to instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't hesitate.